What's up, guys? So in this week's Torah portion we have the story of Joseph and Jacob and his brothers and the people Israel going down to Egypt and blessing Egypt with some really adventurous financial instruments, some long-range planning, some multiculturalism, some diversity, totally improve their news media, quality of their academics. Anyway, like looking at the story of Joseph, he never seems to learn any lessons. Okay, so that guy, he was like prancing around in front of his brothers, like showing off his shiny coat. Oh man, now I can see things clearly. It's like prancing around, showing off his coat of many colors, and he's prancing around, showing off how he is his father's favorite, and he's prancing around, showing off that he's having dreams that they're all going to bow down to him, and doesn't go too well. Surprisingly, his brothers don't really deal well with this kind of prancing, and so they decide to kill him and finally compromise on just selling him into slavery. Forgive and forget? No. Does Joseph, as he becomes the second most powerful man in Egypt, does he try to get in touch with his father and let him know he's okay? No. Does Joseph reach out to his brothers saying, hey, no hard feelings? Does Joseph realize that he was a jerk and that he precipitated his brothers wanting to kill him and eventually sell him into slavery? No. Because you see, Joseph, he then makes sure that Benjamin gets the best stuff. Like, he makes sure that Benjamin gets extra servings and extra gifts. He goes through this elaborate scheme to torture his brothers and his father. Okay? And he learns nothing. Like his own pronouncements of superiority and his own dreams that the others were going to bow down to him, he doesn't learn anything from it. It's like as a kid, he effectively told his brothers, you know, one look at you and I could just tell you're not good people. And you're just like the kind of people I just don't want to deal with anymore. You're beneath me. Isn't it obvious that I'm the chosen one? Isn't it obvious that Dad loves me more? I mean, Joseph said to his brothers, like, my upside is just huge, okay? Your upside is just kind of marginal, but my upside, it's unlimited. I could be effectively king one day. I could be ruler over the land. Now, what are these jerks doing walking around in the middle of the bloody street? This is not fit behavior for white men. Maybe they're tweakers. Bloody hell. So, yeah, Joseph kept telling them, oh, you know, I've got this enormous upside. Isn't it obvious that I should be the leader of this family? Like, isn't it obvious that I'm just superior? You know, isn't it obvious we should just have a Joseph Imperium? And he kept talking to his brothers, telling them, we need to become who we are. Let's become who we are, guys. And he kept tweeting stuff about how they didn't get it, and was going on live streams saying that, you know, they didn't get it and that they were beneath him, and he like made fun of them for being fat, a little intellectually slow. And I think at one point he said to Judah, have you even read the Torah? And then he said to another brother, have you even read the Talmud? And when one of his brothers shot back some cocky remark, I think it was Judah, he said, Judah, you're not as smart as you think you are. So the other brothers, they're bloody resented him for this because they weren't prepared to accept their destiny to become who they are. So they had a resentment. Okay, so Joseph becomes leader of Israel, of Egypt, second only to the king, and just goes through this most elaborate revenge. I mean, the most like detailed psychological torture that he wreaks on his brothers and his father. So he's obviously still got enormous burn against them. Can't let it go. And never, never, ever, ever, ever does Joseph take responsibility for his own choices, his own words, his own actions, everything he did to precipitate his brothers. And then there's another thing here. Joseph arranges a really sweet deal for his brothers and their families to get the best land in Egypt and to create a mighty nation of their own within the nation of Egypt. And it never seems to occur to Joseph that there might be some negative repercussions. That, yeah, even though this current Pharaoh, he's just totally down with the Jews coming to Egypt and building up a mighty nation within the nation. He's totally down with giving them the best land. He's totally down with giving them Goshen. He's totally down with letting them run the Federal Reserve, Hollywood, the news media, dominate academia and the legal and the medical profession. He's all down with that. But there seems to be no introspection on the part of Joseph, let alone anyone else named in the story, that there might be some blowback to this. Because generally speaking, nations don't really enjoy it when foreigners come into their nation and develop their own mighty nation within their nation. Okay, how would you enjoy it if some foreigners, a bunch of shepherds, came into your nation and decided to become a mighty nation within your nation, using your resources, like taking control of the Federal Reserve, using some adventurous financial instruments to dominate the finance trade and the economy, to dominate your media. Like, there are all these great sweeping political, social, cultural, and philosophical debates going on in Egypt after Joseph rose to power. And this is what would happen on a large number of the debates. On both sides of the debate, there'd be a Jew. And so the average Egyptian was like looking around and wondering, like, why are all our debates between people named Cohen and Bukowski and Lieberman and Schwartz? Like, even debates about the national direction of Egypt and Egyptian foreign policy, Egyptian monetary policy, Egyptian welfare policy, they're all going on between people named Cohen and Schwartz and Lieberman. And so for a while there, the Egyptians said, wow, isn't this interesting? These shepherds are really high achieving intellectuals. And the Egyptians said, hey, I've read the Kafka's critique. I know the default hypothesis. Jews just have higher average IQs. And because they live in this urban area of Goshen, the default hypothesis is they're just going to become more influential in all intellectual endeavors that are not overtly anti-Semitic. And for about a generation, the Egyptians were totally down with the Kafka's critique. And the Pharaoh even passed legislation making it illegal to use the term group evolutionary strategy. That was completely prohibited. So for a while, the Egyptians, they were just fine with the Jews running their nation. Like, they were fine with the Jews running their culture, their cinema, their financial institutions, their Federal Reserve, and the high grounds of Egyptian culture. But after about a generation, there arose Egyptians who knew not Joseph. Like, they'd only seen him on TV, and frankly, they didn't care anymore. And so this mighty blowback emerged, because people, generally speaking, they want to run their own countries. They don't want foreigners, outsiders, people practicing a different religion, a different way of life, doing something as detestable as shepherding and making their living from derivatives trading and foreign exchange trading, they weren't down with this anymore. And they were also disturbed by the number of Jews in the pornography industry and who were also trafficking gangster rap. And so there was this mighty blowback. Started building, and it just kept increasing in intensity. So the Jews in Egypt, they formed this Anti-Defamation League, and they got mandatory anti-defamation parts of the Egyptian school curricula. So all Egyptian kids had to go through Anti-Defamation League brainwashing. They set up like a museum of tolerance in Goshen, and they made it mandatory for all Egyptian kids to go through the Museum of Tolerance in Goshen. And it didn't do any good, because in the final analysis, people want to control their own destinies. They don't want foreigners running their countries. So you read the book of Genesis and you read the story of Joseph. He never learns from his mistakes, and he never appears to even consider that there might be a blowback to him bringing his family in and taking all these great deals that the Pharaoh offers. So often people will tell you a great deal, like, hey, there's no obligation. Like, you can take me home and you can make savage love to me, and I'm not going to get all clingy. Like, there's not going to be any price to pay. I mean, we can just have fun. And it doesn't often turn out that way. There's almost always a price. So people will offer you all sorts of sweet deals, and they will say, yeah, you can tap me. You can put it anywhere. But the next day, you know, they might run to the police and claim rape, or they just might regret it a week later and file some a civil or criminal charge against you, or get you kicked out of school, you know, and charge you with date rape. And it's the same with nations too. Like Egypt might say, hey, come in, take our best land, you know, make tons of money, like, build your mighty nation within our nation. Like, just use our nation to pasture your flocks. Like, just use our nation so that you can get rich and you can develop your own culture, and you can run all sorts of wacky social and psychological experiments on us. And yeah, you can just go for it, and you can think, wow, this is a great deal. She lets me stick it anywhere. There are no repercussions to this great deal that I'm getting. But that's not how life works. There are no free lunches. And so Poland might say, oh, we want Jews coming in, like in the, 17th century? You know, we want Jews coming in. They're going to, you know, make our economy great again. And meanwhile, Jews are getting thrown out of countries in Western Europe, so they pour into Poland, and they've got this great deal. They get to be the middlemen between the nobility and the peasants. And the rabbis say, hey, come on in. You'll be able to, because of the default hypothesis, because of the Kaufman's critique, you will be able to dominate the fields of law, banking, medicine, accounting, finance, culture, and whatever you can squeeze from the peasants, okay, after you pay the nobility a set amount, that's yours to keep, and you can just fund your yeshivas with that. And so if you're Jewish, you might think, oh wow, this is a great deal. Like, here's Poland, they want us to come in and make their economy great again, and all we have to do is squeeze the peasants, like, you know, maximize our profits. We just got a set amount that we have to pay to the nobility. We're in like Flynn. We can put it anywhere. But there are always going to be nasty repercussions. There's always going to be blowback. Like, there are many ways that you can invade a country. You can invade a country with troops, or you can take over a country through manipulation of foreclosure laws, or you can see you can see a very profitable path for yourself. Like, here are all these dumb goyim. We can sell them cheap liquor, cheap credit, and when they fail to pay us back, we can possess their farms. Like, this is just going to be a sweet deal. But there are going to be some very nasty repercussions. And it's just stunning how Joseph never seems to realize that there's going to be blowback for the very sweet deal that he's getting his family. So for every action, there's a reaction. And that's why it's important to try to live your life getting along with other people as best as possible. You don't want other people discovering that you've been screwing them, that you've been putting it everywhere you want, but not taking into account their own pleasure, their own well-being, their own interests. And so I see this obvious parallel between Joseph never takes stock of his own behavior, never realizes that he had anything to do with his brothers being ticked at him. And then as you go along in the Torah from the book of Genesis to Exodus, seems to be no introspection, that this like sweet deal that Joseph arranged with the Pharaoh would lead to a nasty blowback, the equivalent of a Holocaust apparently, where thousands, tens of thousands of Jews died in the blowback. Because when there's blowback, it's whether it's in our personal lives or it's in history, it's rarely exactly proportionate. Okay, when there's blowback, such as the Jewish situation in Egypt, it's usually going to be disproportionate. Or like the Jewish situation in the Weimar Republic, Jews played a particularly influential role in the Weimar Republic, though most Jews were moderate politically, on the most destructive side of the left, promoting, you know, the globo homo. There were just an awful lot of Jews, and even though they were just a tiny minority of all Jews, there was this incredible blowback from the Nazis that was not proportionate to the wrongdoing of a tiny number of Jews, because that's just how the world works. Do you think much of the modern discuss with Muslims is just focused on, well, it's because this tiny number of Muslims commit terrorism? Well, tiny number of Muslims, very, very small number of Muslims committing terrorism gives all Muslims a bad name. So if a tiny number of Jews do enormous amounts of destruction through their perfidy, then all Jews may well have to pay a price. And that's how the world works. I didn't invent the world, I just observe it and stream it.